we're currently at 1% of the data center needs that we have. Humanity is going through the greatest change in its existence, greater than the invention of the wheel, greater than the invention of fire, greater than the invention of the personal computer and the internet put together. We have never seen anything of this type. The smartphone wasn't even 1% of the AI revolution. And we think of the smartphone as the greatest invention of our times. It's nothing compared to AI.
You have found Authentic Business Adventures, the business program that brings you the struggles, stories, and triumphant successes of business owners across the land. Downloadable audio episodes can be found in the podcast link found at drawincustomers.com. We are locally underwritten by the Bank of Sun Prairie, Calls on Call Extraordinary Answering Service, the Bold Business Book, as well as Live Switch. And today we're welcoming / preparing to learn from Neal Bawa of Grocapitus. I'm told, Neal, you are the mad scientist of multifamily. Is that true?
It's a moniker. I present at many conferences, so I've presented at over 100. And one of the times when I was walking up to the stage, they were announcing and talking about me. The announcer said, "The mad scientist of multifamily," and that got a nice gasp out of the audience. And I was like, I like this one. And so the next year I went to the conference. He introduced me as a mad scientist, and then eventually I was like, people like this concept because it helps them understand that I'm data driven. I'm very AI focused. And so it's an interesting moniker. I don't have the dark brown hair, but I mean that's how I roll. So I let it be, and eventually it became part of our story.
That is incredible. So tell me the story. How did you end up with the moniker of the mad scientist of multifamily? That's not something people throw randomly around.
Yeah. So look, I'm not a real estate guy. No, not a real estate royalty. No one in my family is in real estate. I'm a technologist. I'm from India. Came here as a computer scientist. Data science is my area of interest. I'm an amateur data scientist, but my degree is in computer science. And I ran a tech company from 1999 to 2013. Very successful, not a startup. Hundreds of employees, and we sold it in 2013. And my interest in real estate started when the senior partner in the firm, I was a junior partner, basically said in 2003, we are not going to rent, we are going to build our own campus. And this wasn't a multifamily campus at that time, it was an office campus for a business. And, we had 150 employees and we were renting from somebody and he didn't like that. So he, under his guidance and his expert advice, I built the first campus in 2003. We took 12 months to build it. We had no investors. We had no bank. It was just all cash. We built it ourselves because the business was quite profitable. And at the end of that process, I realized just the extraordinary, shockingly high benefits that you get when you use depreciation, right? Because this big campus, 27,000 square feet, and I just all of a sudden was taking a lot more money home. I wasn't making more money. I was just taking a lot more money home because the depreciation of that building was phenomenal. And that got me hooked into real estate because at one time, I remember after that building was done, James, I remember saying to my wife, I think real estate is the best authorized tax scam in America. Now, obviously, I didn't know depreciation back then. I didn't understand accounting. Now I understand that there's nothing scammy about it. Depreciation is a legitimate right, and you take it for real estate. You can also take it for other things. But for real estate, it's extremely beneficial compared to any other form of depreciation, any other business. And so I realized that I had the big fat tech salary, and I was living in California. So I was basically working for the man. 50% of my salary was going to state and federal. And so I said, I need to find a way around this because, I read a book by Robert Kiyosaki and I remember the statement, it's not what you make, it's what you keep, right? And I was like, I ain't keeping much of my salary. So I was like, okay, I need to get into real estate. So I went back to my boss and said, what we did with this campus was really great. Let's do it again. And so we built a bunch more campuses. I think 4 or 5 campuses were built and improved, coming up to 2008. And so each year what would happen is I was keeping more and more of my income because of all the depreciation that I was getting. And so I was saving and saving and saving. And so I'd ended up with, pretty large amount of money by the time 2008 hit. And then when that happened, all of a sudden property values plummeted. They went down. And so I would go to, my family events and everyone would just bash real estate. Everyone's like, this is horrible. Don't buy real estate. It's horrible, horrible. It's going to crash. It's worth nothing, blah, blah, blah. And you can imagine everyone was saying that because, all the television on the TV, you're just hearing bad news, bad news. Every day is bad news. It can only go down further. Millions and millions of homes are in foreclosure. And I'm like, I don't understand this. I don't understand. I mean, I'm from the Warren Buffett school of investing, which is, when things are cheap, you buy them. So I'm like, but I don't want to make a mistake. I have this money, this that I've saved up over the last 5 or 6 years. I want to go out and buy as many single family homes as I can, but I don't want to make a mistake. What if I'm just an idiot that knows nothing? So I decided that I would basically educate myself. And I did that in the typical way that, technologists and engineers do. I said I'm going to mine as much data as possible and try to get insights from that data. So I started mining websites like Bureau of Labor Statistics and Zillow and Trulia and Redfin and all these other sites that Realtor.com that you've heard about in the real estate area. And I'm mining gigabytes of data and putting them into a statistical analysis software called R. The software is R, and statisticians know it. And you know what R does? It makes it easy for you to take huge amounts of data that you know nothing about and give you insights, right? These days, AI does it, and it even does it better than the software, but back then there was no AI. So the software would give you insights. It would give you correlation. So you could say something like, show me real estate profits that are made in this city and this city and this city, and correlate that real estate profit with these various things that I'm looking at. What is the highest correlation? Is the correlation of profits highest to population growth or job growth or income growth or home price growth or crime reduction or schools? Where's the correlation, the connection, the biggest, right? And then based on that correlation, I'm now mining data for 1,016 cities in the US. I'm mining data for 323 metros, right? That's how many MSAs we have in the US. And I'm trying to get this software to learn enough about these cities to say things like, in the next 2 or 3 years, the chances of this city going up in price is much higher than the chances of that city. And compare those cities in their potential for home price increase, for rent increase, right? By looking at massive amounts of data and looking at the structure, looking at the past, looking at past performance. This stuff sounds easy to do. It wasn't. It took an entire year to set this stuff up. But at the end of the year, I was the only guy outside of the big companies that had this database of massive amounts of information. As I said, population growth, income growth, home price growth, job growth, crime reduction, school quality for every market in the US. And I was basically comparing it. And so at the end of 2008, the database was ready. And what the database told me was, this is the greatest time in 100 years to buy real estate. So I was, like the idiot I am, I basically went to one of my family parties at the end of 2008 and gathered everybody together and repeated it. And I sort of expected to be treated like a hero. My family immediately banned me from all parties because they thought I would infect others in the family with my stupid ideas and everyone would lose millions. They had money too, but nobody wanted to waste it. So I got pissed off. I love my family and they basically didn't want to invite me to parties because I thought that I was kooky and would do, was doing stupid things. So I'm like, okay, I am going to go and talk to other people like me. I live in Silicon Valley, best place on the planet for kooky people like me. So I opened a meetup. I went to meetup.com, created a meetup around the data science of real estate, and I hosted it inside of my company. I had huge conference rooms that 100 people could fit in. I thought 100 people would show up. Funny enough, 4 people showed up the first time, but they were the right people. One guy was from Apple, one guy was from LinkedIn, one guy was from Google, and they were data scientists. And so I'm like, I'm not a data scientist, but I have an interest in this. I'm an engineer, and I've gathered all this data together, and this is what it's telling me. And these guys are like, no. I mean, everyone's saying, real estate is horrible. Real estate is horrible. How can your data be saying this? And then I had them look into it. And because they were data scientists, they were curious. They looked into it. They said, I think you're right. This may be the greatest time to buy real estate ever. So we started holding meetups every month. And, the second time I held it, 10 people showed up. The third time we were 20 people. The fourth time we held it, we had over 100 people, mostly technologists, mostly, software engineers from, um, that were interested in data science. They'd heard that this guy, Neal Bawa, has gathered a database of some kind. And other people helped me. I'd made mistakes. People tweaked it and said, here's a better way of doing it. There's a better way. So it went along in 2009. And eventually we sorted and sliced and diced the database. Eventually we were like, okay, I think we have the right list. At the top of the list, James, surprisingly, very surprisingly, I live in California, was a city in California. Basically, the software was saying that this city has dropped the most from peak to trough to the bottom, which was 2009, and probably will rise the most over time because it's dropped so much. It had dropped 69% from peak, right? The in that 2008 crash, the US market dropped 30%. Some markets dropped 40 and 50 and 60%, but very few markets had dropped 69%. It was a good market called Madera, California. And I was very excited that it was in California. So I jumped into my car on a Saturday morning and I drove 144 miles from Silicon Valley to go to Fresno. This is Madera is a part of the Fresno metro. And I go out there and I go sit down with an agent and I say, what can I buy? And he's like, oh, you see this entire row of this road? And on both sides, I'm seeing brand new homes. They're 4-bedroom, brand new, probably built in 2006, 2007. These are all empty. You can buy them all. And I'm like, okay, how much do these cost to build? And he's like, probably 250,000 is what they cost. Okay, how much can I buy them for? 90,000. And I said, well, how can I buy something that costs 250,000 to build for 90,000? He said, because there's thousands of them empty. Kaufman and Broad built these homes, and they had all these farm workers that used stated income to buy these in 2005, 6, and 7. Those people have all left now. And so basically this half of the city is empty, right? So that's why they're available for $90,000 each. So I'm like, so eventually someday the value has to come back to 250,000, right? And that might take a very long time. He said, yeah, it might take 10 years. Actually, just so you know, between you and me, it took about 5. So I'm like, okay, so why isn't everybody buying these? Like if they cost 250,000 to build and 90,000 to buy and they're brand new, why doesn't everyone buy them? They said, well, because we don't have any tenants. We need tenants, right? Because people are not willing to just buy them and sit on them for 5 years without any income. So I said, why don't we have income? They said, well, because the economy is down. This is 2009, economy is not doing well. All the tenants are in Fresno, and Fresno is 22 miles away. I said, okay. I jump back into my car. I drive to Fresno. I go into another realtor's office and I say, I want you to sell me an old property. And he's like, no, I have all these new ones. I said, no, I want an old one, like 1990s property. So he sells me the property at Summerfield Drive, 2483 South Summerfield Drive. So I buy the property for $80,000, something like that. And then I go to my Ukrainian hacker. I was working with a Ukrainian hacker for dashboarding from my company. And I say, I want thousands of leads, tenant leads for this one property. He's like, what are you going to do with thousands of leads? By the time you get 20 or 30 leads, you'll fill it, right? I said, no, I need thousands. He said, okay, well, then I have to write some software and script and hack, Redfin and Trulia and Zillow and apartments.com. I said, yes, I'll pay you to do that. And I paid him a couple $1,000s and he hacked them. And all of a sudden that property was always on top on these websites because he was clicking and repeat, like every few minutes his script was moving it back to the top. And I'm getting the phone is ringing off the hook. I hire a Filipino lady. Her name was Michelle. And I say, Michelle, every incoming call that comes in, tell people this property, the one in Fresno, is full. But we've got 10 other properties that are in Madera, 22 miles away. They're brand new, 4-bedroom, and they're for $995 a month rent, all inclusive, right? And if you go see those properties, we will give you a $50 Amazon or gas card, basically, regardless of whether you rent or not. So 90% of the people, James, thought that we were some kind of scam. And so they would hang up on us. 10% of people were like, okay, so you're going to give me a $50 gift card even if I don't rent the property? Sure, I'll jump into my car. I'll go out to Madera. And so we started getting people that wanted to go and see the properties in Madera. So I went back to the Madera agent and I said, hey, I want to buy 10 to 50 of these properties, but I can't afford to give you cash. You have to let me show them to tenants. If I sign a contract with the tenant, I'll pay you cash the next day for the property. He was like, okay, because I mean, the agents were desperate. They had, hundreds of properties to move. So people started coming in. Every 10th or 15th person would fall in love with the property because compared to Fresno, which had 50-year-old properties at $1,500, now I had brand new, never lived in four-bedroom properties built by Kaufman and Broad for $995. So people are like, I'll commute. There's no traffic between Fresno and Madera. So I basically would fill a property and buy a property in cash every month. And I did that for 2 years for myself, my family, my in-laws, dozens of properties. I would publish that information on the meetup group. Eventually, just my group, ended up buying 600 of them, right?
Wow.
Because I mean, the Apple guy, he was making 4 times what I was making, right? So he had like huge amounts of money. So like everyone is making money. We're all data scientists. There's no service, there's no product, there's no consulting. We're just a bunch of tech guys that are like, don't you understand this? That we have this property that we pay $90,000 to, and we immediately get $1,000 in rent, right? Immediately. And then we would go back and refinance them, right? So we didn't have enough money to keep just putting down 90,000, 90,000. So once the property had tenants, we'd go and refinance it. We'd pull out $60,000, and then we'd use that and rinse repeat. And so we're doing this, and other people are noticing what's going on here. So one guy comes to me and says, "Why don't you publish this thing that you've done with your statistical analysis thing, simplify it, and publish it so that anyone in the US can rank cities?" And I said, "No, this is a really complex thing to do. It took me a year to do." He said, "Yeah, but you figured out all of the concepts, right? People should have the benefit of all the stuff that you learned over that year. Why don't you simplify it?" I was like, "Okay, why don't you help me?" And he said, "I'll help you." So we wrote a course called Location Magic, which was a 60-minute course that allows you to compare any city in America to any other city in America for real estate profits, right? Because you're trying to figure out which city is the most profitable. And we put it up on a website called Udemy, udemy.com. There's millions of courses on Udemy.
Mhm.
And I'm like, maybe I'll get, a couple hundred people a year that will be interested in the data science of real estate and, geeky, nerdy people like me. If you go to my course today, if you go to udemy.com and search for Neal Bawa, you'll notice 15,000 people are taking the course.
Wow.
15,000.
That's
Right?
awesome.
So it turns out that a country of 330 million people has lots of nerdy and geeky people that like the data science of real estate. So before I knew it, James, people were calling me to conferences, and I would these are real estate conferences, right? Everybody's a real estate guy. This guy's saying I have a $500 million database, portfolio. This guy's saying I have a billion. And I'm the guy that's standing up on stage and saying, I have no investors. I'm not a real estate guy. I don't have a real estate business. I'm just here to tell my story. I'm a technologist that runs a technology company, and I'm just here to tell you my story. But people loved that because everybody else was pitching something, right? They had something to sell. And here I am, 2009, 10, 11, 12, 13, 5 years. I'm going to these conferences. I have nothing to sell. Because what could I sell? I mean, I just had some ideas that I wanted to deliver to people. So now people are calling me to these conferences. They're giving me free tickets to the conference, free business class tickets and hotel. And I'm enjoying it. Now, of course, I realize I should have, made them pay for it, but didn't know any of those things back then. And over that time, I'm developing a brand. I'm developing a following. There's all these people in the Bay Area following. There's all these people on the conferences following me. And so in 2013, I sell my business and I have a gigantic tax bill, absolutely massive. Can you imagine? I mean, if you have a multi-million-dollar, tax bill in California, you're paying 13.5% to California, 37% federal, 3.5% Obamacare. So you're paying 53% of your income to the tax man. And I'm like, F, like what, I need to find a way out. So I go to my CPA and I say, look, I do this single family thing. By that time, by 2013, the prices had gone up. So I didn't want to buy single families. He said, look, you should buy multifamily. And I said, so if I buy 2 or 3 multifamilies, my tax bill will go down to zero. He said, no, that's not going to happen. So I said, what should I do? I don't have enough money to buy more than 2 of them. These are big buildings, like 200 units. He's like, have you heard of syndication? And I'm like, I don't know what syndication is. He said, the way syndication works is you find 50 investors, they give you $100,000 each. So you take $5 million of their money, you put in $1 million, and then you go buy a building. So I said, okay, but how does that help me? He said, because in syndication, the general partner also gets 30% of the depreciation of the limited partners. So you get your millions depreciation, but you also get 30% of their 5 millions depreciation. Now you have a lot more depreciation, and now your tax bill can go down to zero. And this was July 2013. And a light bulb went off in my head. I said, this really, people will let you take 30% of their syndication? I said, yeah, I mean, because you're making money for them. You're buying and managing this building. So, you get 30% of the profits at the end and you get 30% of the depreciation up front. I'm like, wow, this sounds too good to be true. I do the research. It seems legit. I get involved. And here we are, 12 years later. I am now a full-time real estate person, even though I spend 4 hours a day doing AI. And I have 1,350 investors. I've invested about $350 million of their money into $1 billion of real estate. More than half of it has been sold. I'm not buying anything at this point in time. And that's about it. I mean, yay for nerds and geeks.
it's, it's so funny because the joke was the kids in high school that are the jocks, those are going to be people that are working for the nerds and the geeks.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you this, James. I have only ever come up with one saying in my life, one saying, but I think it's a good one. Okay. And the saying is, the Bible was wrong by one letter, because it is not the meek that shall rule the earth. It's the geek.
Ha!
It's the geek, right? Richest man in the world, geek. Second richest man in the world, geek. Third richest man in the world, geek. You see a pattern, James? Do you see a pattern?
I do. I do. That's they're rich. People may not like them, but they got money. That's true.
Yeah, I mean, Elon is a uber geek.
Yeah. Yeah. We didn't know it could get that high. Tell me the syndication thing. You decided to start your own syndication then.
Yeah.
At what point did your family turn around and they were willing to let you come to their party?
Oh, that didn't, it was maybe 3 or 4 months, and they eventually realized that, maybe I had something, some interesting thing. And my family then went out and, I mean, they're richer than me. They went out and bought a bunch of them. So I think that all ended well. It was just a short period of time, but by that time I'd gotten hooked onto doing the meetup and doing my stuff. So I never stopped. I think the family just gave me that push of proving myself and saying, I think I've got something here. If I can get 5 other data scientists who are professional data scientists, I'm an amateur, right? To say, okay, he's got something, then I'd feel better about it. And even if I lost my money, at least I would say, look, these other 4 people thought I was doing the right thing.
Sure. Tell me a story about the management of those houses in, was it Madero? Is that what you said?
Madero.
Madero. So you're buying all these places, or you
Right.
and the other investors are buying them. Somebody's got to manage them.
Yep.
Who did you get to manage them?
So, what's interesting is, now I have thousands of units, right? So thousands of apartment units, and there's professional third-party companies called property managers that manage these things. But when I started managing them, I bought one property, and then a couple months later, I bought the next one, and my wife got interested into it. So I was like, I mean, she's a school teacher. Her job, she's a kindergarten school teacher. So her kids leave at noon. She still has to be in the school at 3 o'clock, and she's working on papers, and there's plenty of time. She's like, I want to manage these. And I'm like, I don't think that's a good idea. I mean, you don't live in Madeira, it's 144 miles away. But my wife is a very clever person. She said, don't worry. Just go to Craigslist and put a post on there saying I'm looking for a local part-time property manager and another ad for a local maintenance person. I said, okay. I put the ad there. She basically found people that were living in Madeira as people that would show the properties to people. And then she found local maintenance people. And I sold a bunch of those properties. I think I've sold four or five of those properties. I still have a dozen under my name. And then, we also manage our mother-in-law's properties. And she doesn't let me sell them. And now I can't sell them anyway, because one of the problems with depreciation is, if you've taken $6 or $7 million of depreciation out, if you sell them, all of that $6 or $7 million of depreciation will be captured. So imagine I'll have to pay $2 or $3 million in taxes if I sell these properties, right?
That's right.
So
Buy,
what I've
borrow,
done,
die, man.
exactly. So what I've done basically is I've taken all the equity out of them, right? So I've refinanced them. 2020, interest rates were 3.5%. So I refinanced all of them, took all the equity out, and moved the equity to other things. And so I've kept them, and my wife manages them. What I've done is I've built AI or artificial intelligence dashboards and software for her that helps her manage this stuff. So there's a lot of automation and a lot of, AI is my passion. And so I've built a lot of things that help her do her job so that she doesn't feel like a property manager. She does have an executive assistant who's a Filipino. Um, she does have, several maintenance guys. She has several people that show the property. But just an example of how successful she's been with it. The last time she visited Madeira was 7 years ago, and we have, 50, 14, 15 properties there 7 years ago, and she's keeping it 96% occupied.
Wow, that's impressive.
So
That is impressive. Tell me about that town. I imagine it recovered.
yeah, yeah. So it was a fast recovery because it dropped a lot. So I think on average, the $90,000 home that we purchased is now worth about 400,000. And again, we sold a few of them, but then we realized that it was best to just hold them for cash because the tenants are good quality. The problem, of course, is single family homes. They don't have scale, right? So once I went into multifamily, when you buy a 200 unit multifamily, you're buying a business. It's like buying a bunch of Taco Bells, right? So it's a business, and you're buying it based on the income of the property. The problem with single family is you're buying it based on comps. If the property next to you is the same size and it was 1 million, this one's worth 1 million. Even if the rent that you get is 3,000 a month, it's still worth 1 million. Well, that's not going to ever make any money for me, right? So because single family is not based on rental, values, it's based on comps. After a while, I realized that that would never scale. That was not a business. You weren't buying a business. With multifamily, though, it's a business. So, for example, if a standard multifamily property produces $1 million of income or net operating income or NOI, right? It might be worth some multiples of that, usually 15x or 20x. If for whatever reason the rents in that whole market went down 20%, this property now its net operating income has gone down to 800,000, right? Well, now this property is worth 20% less. Same property, right? Same number of tenants, but it's worth 20% less. I like that because that appeals to the data scientist and the technologist in me that, look, I'm buying a business. If its income goes down, it's worth less. If its income goes up, it's worth more. So if I can do something to increase that income, I'm in a good place. And so once I went to multifamily, I didn't look back. What I like about multifamily is my average multifamily 200 units is sort of the average. We have some larger ones, 320 units, 240 units. 200 unit property usually has 5 or 6 employees. So there's a property manager, an assistant property manager, a lead maintenance tech, a porter or a junior maintenance tech, and a leasing agent, right? So you got at least 5 people that on a full-time basis work at this property. And several of them live at the property because you usually give them discounted rent. Like if you want your lead maintenance guy to live at the property in case there's a pipe that breaks at 2 a.m. in the morning. And so you give them, 30, 40% off, and they always take it because, it's just convenient for them to live there and get a discount. I like that, James, because that means that it's scaled. Now, for my single families, there's one place in Madeira where we, have a storage unit and we put all of our appliances, air conditioners, and things like that there. But at a multifamily, I mean, there's actual space in the clubhouse, behind the clubhouse usually, where there's a big 300-400 square foot area that you store all this stuff in. So all of your maintenance is done that way. Your lead maintenance guy is good enough to do laminate work, to do resurfacing of countertops, to paint. So you're not paying external maintenance people 75 or $150 an hour. You're paying, in the Southeast, I'm paying about $26, $27 an hour.
Wow, that's awesome. That is cool. Tell me about the investors that you get.
A lot of my investors are sort of geeky and nerdy like me. I've had 200 plus doctors. I have, about um, about 150 that are CEOs or technologists, people that are writing software and code. Half of them live in the San Francisco Bay Area. The other half live everywhere else in the US because, I present at conferences, so people follow me. Um, and the what they're interested in, I mean, these are very busy people. They're working 12-hour day jobs. What they're interested in is getting high quality investor updates. So unlike most people that might update, their investors once or twice a year, I update my investors 4 times a year. So I'll do 2 written updates and 2 webinars. And the webinars are very high quality, proper slides, screenshots of what's going on in the property, videos of what's happening, and then 2 long investor updates. These days, of course, they're written by AI, and then we create beautiful graphics, also created by AI. And that allows our investors to feel like they know our property. That allows our investors to feel like they understand our property. And we always, using AI, we record every single meeting that we have with our property manager. So we meet with them on Mondays and Tuesdays. And these meetings are 45 minutes long, right? The meetings are recorded using Zoom Enterprise. It records the transcripts. And then we have these softwares that we've created where we throw in the transcript and it actually finds a horror story. So every time we send an investor update, there's a horror story about some dog that bit somebody or, some gunshot at some property. And you might say, that's a bad thing to tell your investors? No, the investors always think we would be dealing with it if Neal isn't dealing with it, right? He's got a team dealing with it. And so we always tell horror stories at the property. We've had, in the last 12 years, we had a property that caught fire, 6 units burned down. We've had, 3 or 4 people died at the property, including 1 murder. We've had, you know, guys beat up their girlfriends and call the cops. We've had dogs bite people. We've had cats bite people. Which is rare, but it happens. And so I think you have to understand, I mean, the people that live in apartments are not the most organized and not necessarily the most law-abiding people. And so, these apartments are not necessarily places where I would live. Most of them are not Class A, though I have some Class A. They're mostly Class B, Class C. So it's really the Starbucks barista that's living at this property. And so a lot of investors are interested in the pitch, which is let's buy properties for the common man and let's improve them. Maybe we go from laminate countertops to granite countertops in some of the units, and some of the tenants pay up a little bit more for it. Let's take out 20-year-old appliances and put in nice appliances. Let's put in nice lighting. Let's convert the carpets, which are dirty and old, to laminate. Those kinds of things. Small upgrades. We're not doing major upgrades. And so the doctors, the technologists, it appeals to them because they've been watching some of these, flip shows on TV, but they don't want to get involved. And so we're doing that job. It takes us on average 2.5 years to renovate the property because we don't shut the property down. We only renovate units when they turn, right? So whenever a tenant leaves, we take 3 weeks, we upgrade the unit, we bump up the rent $150, and then new tenant comes in. So it takes a long time to go through a 200 unit property. And that's the job. It's fundamentally unsexy. There's nothing magical about it. It's grungy. Every week you have to beat up the property manager. We're not property managers. We're not interested in property management, but we are asset managers. So, I have three full-time employees, right? Kimberly, Brad, Mike. Their job is to manage 15 properties. And these 15 properties have 15 different property managers because they're all over the US. And so our job is to beat up on that property manager and say, hey, this lead came in on Monday morning and the software shows that you didn't call them back until Wednesday. Shame on you. You should be calling back in 60 minutes. You agreed with us to do that. Stuff like that. Repeat, rinse, repeat. And then, of course, we use massive amounts of AI. We suck out all the information from their property management software. We build beautiful dashboards. And those dashboards are used to shame them. So what we do is we basically, pull up the dashboard on Zoom and we say, you realize that your leasing agent is currently ranked number 8 out of 12 leasing agents. They say, why? We click on the link and it basically shows that leasing agent takes longer to make phone calls, makes less phone calls, sends less text messages, chases people less, doesn't send out reminders for appointments, doesn't follow up after the appointments to get applications, and then doesn't work on the applications quickly enough to get leases. Obviously, no one person would do all of these because they'd be fired, but some property manager is good at one thing and some's good at the other. And we're always highlighting that through the use of AI. And so our investors, these investors that, that's the question you asked me, they like that because we publish these dashboards for our investors. We say, look, here's the dashboard. And we don't tell them our property is the best. Obviously, if you have 15 properties, only one of them can be the best, right? So what we tell them is that we're constantly ranking our leasing agents, our maintenance staff, our property managers, our regional property manager on these metrics with these beautiful, gorgeous dashboards and, things like that that you can see. And our investors like that.
Nice.
So we are basically a technology company masquerading as a real estate company.
All right. Fair. Fair. Tell me, it sounds like you're in multiple cities across the country. Is that correct?
Yes. So we have properties in 10 states, 17 cities.
All right. Have you seen a common denominator between the cities? Because I imagine you're still using the software or something of it to try to figure out which cities to invest in. What are some
Yes,
of
I mean we continue to rank cities, right? So the five parameters that originally were created in that software called Location Magic, which I mentioned 2009, 2010, were we would rank these cities by population growth, job growth, home price growth, income growth, and crime reduction. We did those five, but over time we realized that that was not enough. So now we've added a number of factors, another 20 plus factors. Of those 20 factors, the one that's most important is incoming supply. So a lot of people, James, will go out and there'll be like, they go water cooler discussion on Knoxville's a great city to invest in. And so they go to Knoxville and they go to a local property manager, they buy a rental. Nothing wrong with Knoxville, Tennessee. My point though is, do you know if there's incoming supply in Knoxville? A lot of people are like, yeah, but I don't care about multifamily supply. I'm buying a single family rental. Okay, here's news for you. There is one rental market in the US, one rental market, and there are four pieces to that rental market. At the top of the list is single family rental homes. After that, Class A multifamily, brand new multifamily, beautiful, amenitized, rooftop pools, gyms, sexy, good looking, 9-foot ceilings. Then below that, Class B, right? Property that's 20, 30 years old. And then below that, Class C, no amenities, 50, 60, 70-year-old building. These are the four parts of the American rental, world, and they all influence each other. And the second part, which is the Class A multifamily, in the last 3 years, there's been an avalanche of supply. A massive amount of supply in more than 50 cities has come in. And because the tier above that is single family, if these guys in second tier basically say, we're going to offer 2 months off, then their price basically drops down to the Class B level, which drags the single family price down. So what we've discovered is even if you're buying one single property in Knoxville, Tennessee, because of a water cooler discussion, for God's sake, know what this incoming supply in Knoxville is. In the past, people would say, simply come and tell me, because I'd present this at conferences. People would say, Neal, I mean, the data to buy supply data, you have to buy it from CoStar or elsewhere. They were right. I mean, back then there was no free way to get this data. Now it's no longer true because of this wonderful thing called AI. All you got to do is ask AI, what are the top 10 multifamily brokers in America? It'll give you a list, right? And then you switch to Codex, which is, ChatGPT's sort of programming tool. And you go in and say, here are the top 10 multifamily brokers in the United States. I want you to go create a Gmail account and go register for all free newsletters you can find on their website. It'll do that. Then once it's done with that, we'll say, now I want you to suck all of the information that's coming in about multifamily from these top 10 newsletters into a database. It'll do that. You don't have to learn how to program. And then you'll say, now build me a dashboard that ranks cities. Now, what we do is 10 times more complex than what I told you, but what I just told you is enough for most people. Because now you'll be able to see this Knoxville, Tennessee guy at the water cooler, he had no freaking idea that there's 10,000 units coming in Knoxville, Tennessee. And the data from CBRE or Marcus and Millichap, which is higher in quality, is showing me that there's going to be negative 3% rent growth in Knoxville for the next 2 years. And if I'm buying, my rents are going to go down, not up. All this magic. I mean, literally what I just told you should take you a couple hours to do with a $20 ChatGPT account. This used to cost $20,000 to do 3 years ago.
It's
And if you don't
surreal.
do it, then you're not data driven. Then you're basically just saying, I'm acting like I'm data driven.
Throwing money at the wall and we'll see what sticks, right? I
Yep.
know we don't have a ton of time left, Neal, so I want to chat about Mission 10K.
Sure.
What is Mission 10K?
It's our mission to basically build 10,000 rental townhomes in the US. We've currently paused the mission in almost all places because Congress has a very nasty bill which says that if you build townhomes for rent and you're building 200 of them, then within 7 years you have to sell those townhomes to individual occupiers as opposed to selling. Normally we build a 200 unit townhome community, we sell it to Blackstone or we sell it to some big company that continues to rent those townhomes, and that's our exit. But unfortunately this new bill means that people may be forced to um, people like us may be forced to sell our property piecemeal to 200 individual buyers, which would completely destroy the business model for Mission 10K. So we mostly put it on pause while we wait to see whether Congress actually passes this bill or not. Hopefully they don't, because I think it would be very destructive. But
Sure.
the
Tell
the
me.
mission was simple. Americans do not want to live in apartments. Let's give them townhomes to live in. Maybe not a two-car garage, maybe a one-car garage, maybe a small backyard instead of a large backyard, but now you're living in a home, nobody above and below you.
So I've listened to podcasts about real estate and corporate investing causing real estate prices to go up. So is that what the bill is essentially trying to minimize or avoid?
What they're trying to do is what they're saying is, well, if you're building a townhome or if you're building a single family home for rental, we don't want you to take away from the rental um, take away from the single family inventory of the US, because you're building on the same land that otherwise a builder might build a home on. In some ways that makes sense, but the bottom line is what it'll end up doing is it'll end up hurting all townhome for rental construction in the US, and we won't be able to do it. Like, so, our company has put, what we're doing with Mission 10K on hold because of it.
Gotcha. Okay. And then you also have an educational portion of your business. Is that right?
So it's not a paid educational portion of our business. I believe in Wikipedia. I love Wikipedia. I think Wikipedia is one of the greatest models in the world. There's no one making money on Wikipedia, right? Wikipedia is a volunteer model. So I want it to be the Wikipedia of commercial real estate, whether it's single family, whether it's multifamily, whether it's self-storage, hotels, industrial. And so multifamilyu.com is our website where we record 8 beautifully designed webinars that are 1 hour each. There's usually 30 minutes of questions about different interesting topics in single family. So obviously once a year we do single family, once a year we do multifamily, once a year we'll do other things like Airbnb, industrial, self-storage. How are these verticals doing? Where's the opportunity? Of course, once a year we rank cities. That's called Location Magic. And tens of thousands of people sign up for webinars. These are all data-driven people. Of those people that sign up for webinars, we don't have a tier, we don't have a subscription, we don't have an upsell, there's no educational product. 1% of those people become investors with us, and that's all we get out of it. So in every webinar, we have a 60-second ad of whatever it is, whatever project we're doing at that point of time that we have open for investment. That's it, 60 seconds out of 90 minutes. And 1% of the people that watch these webinars become investors with us. And the remaining 99% just get incredible amounts of real estate information for free. People have been doing it for 12 years. They've never invested anything, and it doesn't bother us.
That's awesome. Tell me, as far as the returns that investors can expect in not necessarily yours, but universally any syndication, when you compare to stock market or investing in real estate on their own or investing in gold, Bitcoin, whatever. I guess, how
Yeah.
does it compare with any of those?
So I think I have to give you a very generic answer. So here's what I'll say. For properties that were purchased between, let's say, 2013 and 2019 and sold by 2022, the returns were very, very high.
Oh, yeah.
So a lot of people made 30% annualized. Some people made 50% annualized. Some people made 100% annualized. The returns were extremely high. For properties that were purchased maybe 2020 and after and are still being held or were, held beyond 2023 when the interest rates doubled, there really hasn't been much of a return, if anything. So now, of course, if you're buying a newer property, now you're buying them much cheaper. Multifamily property prices have dropped 20 to 30%. So you're buying at a lower price because rents have dropped and interest rates have gone up. So hopefully, going forward, people will be able to make a 15 to 20% return, and that's really the targeted goal. It's hard, um, but that's the best answer that I can give you. Market conditions have made a dramatic or drastic change to the amount of profits that people can make from multifamily.
Right on. Are you, when you're looking for investors, do they have to be accredited or any other criteria that you need to have?
All of our investors have to be accredited. If you go into ChatGPT and say, what is an accredited investor, it'll give you a definition. Lots of people qualify. Some people don't qualify. And so all of our investors have to be accredited. But in general, if you're interested in syndication, know that there are syndications of two kinds. And one of them require you to be accredited, including all of my projects. And one of them doesn't require you to be accredited. So we won't be able to help you with that, but there are many others in the industry that can help you.
Gotcha. I want to ask you really quickly about a few different types of real estate. You mentioned a few of them, and I've heard good and bad on some, and I was hoping to get your opinion. Mini warehouses or self storage, what are your thoughts on those?
Huge amounts of incoming supply, so I don't see a lot of rent growth in the next 2 or 3 years. So I'd say steady Eddie.
Okay. Single family or duplex?
Very problematic market. Single family prices have not dropped at all, even though interest rates have doubled. So that market is losing velocity. This year, prices have finally started to drop in a number of metros in the US. This is just not a time where you get appreciation on the single family side. And to be honest, single family is all about appreciation because the rents are so low compared to the purchase price that it's really an appreciation play. So for the moment, I'm very bearish on single family. That changes, but for the moment, I'm bearish.
And then condos or townhomes, I guess we mentioned a little bit, but let's just say those
I think
universal.
they're similar to single family. I do think that townhomes are a slightly better use for rentals because their prices tend to be a little bit lower. So when you're going in, you're spending a little bit less, and on the rents, you get almost the same rents as single family. So I think newer townhomes are probably a bit better, but not very bullish at all at this point.
All right. And how about the larger scale multifamily? And I guess when I say larger scale, I'm thinking 100 plus, but it sounds like your number may be even bigger than that.
So my comments apply for anything that's 5 units or over. So, for purposes of loans, 1 to 4 units is considered single family, 5 units is considered multifamily. So my comment applies for anything over 5 units. This may be a good time to buy because prices are beat down, rents are, have declined. And so we think we're pretty much at the bottom of the market where, prices are in some markets 25% lower, some markets 30% lower. But they haven't gone up or gone down for a year. So this seems to be a plateau. So we think that you're buying pretty much at the bottom of the market,
Okay.
which surprises people. They still are like, really? Multifamily prices have dropped that much? Yes, they have.
Right on. And then do you do anything with commercial office space or warehouse or anything like that?
I've built warehouses. I've built office space. It's not something that I do very often. But I think that Um, I'm very bearish on Office because of the fact that we continue to have, as technology gets better, it becomes easier for people to work, from home. I mean, here we are having a conversation thousands of miles away, and so I think technology is making it easier and easier and easier. And because the next generation grew up during COVID and they went to school for a year from, remotely, they're well equipped to do this remotely. So I feel like it might take a decade before we need to build more office space in the US. So not very bullish on that. Very bullish on warehouses. I think that's a great business for two major reasons. One is we continue to see uh, more e-commerce. Amazon just keeps sucking up tens of millions of square feet of warehouse space. And the second one is data centers. We need to build massive, massive, massive numbers of data centers in the US, and they all use warehouse space. So I think that there's room for warehouse growth. It's not going to be very sexy, but I do think that that's an area that could see significant growth.
Tell me, so you are very into the AI thing, and I'm in Wisconsin where they're talking about, or some are even building gargantuan. I mean, from my point of view, they're insanely huge data centers. So, and I don't understand I go to ChatGPT, I get this answer. What does that take from what does that mean from a data center? Because right now I'm getting the answer. So, what is a data center for? And we're not just talking like 1,000 square feet, there's millions of square feet.
Mhm.
So, help me understand what all that is for.
Well, I mean, keep in mind when you're having a conversation with ChatGPT, right? The reason it's not real time, it takes a second or 2 seconds for it to answer is your question is just your machine's just simply sending that question to the cloud, to that million square foot data center, where a very, very powerful, very, very expensive server is churning away on it for about a fifth of a second or a third of a second, and then writing an answer and sending it back to you. Your machine is just a front end. All of the work is being done at those super expensive data centers. And based on my projections and projections I've seen from others in the industry, we're currently at 1% of the data center uh, needs that we have. Where humanity is going through the greatest change in its existence, greater than the invention of the wheel, greater than the invention of fire, greater than the invention of the personal computer and the internet put together. We have never seen anything of this type. The smartphone wasn't even 1% of the AI revolution. And we think of the smartphone as the greatest invention of our times. Um, it's nothing compared to AI. AI is a fundamental shift in humanity. And as a result, we're going to need to build an absolutely insane amount of data centers. We will build them in space. We will build them underwater because, cooling. Space obviously is very cold. Um, we will build them on land, and we will build them anywhere we can find land, anywhere where we can build, where we can find power. We will build massive, massive solar farms to support them. Um, we will build massive amounts of battery backups to support data centers. All of this is inevitable, and we're just at the beginning of that process. So, um, just enormous, huge amounts of growth. And a lot of people are like, no, I don't think it's going to go that way. I just want to point out to you that there's no city in America that doesn't have dozens of warehouses owned by one company, Amazon. And these didn't exist 25 years ago. Amazon now is the largest shipper in America. They're bigger than FedEx and UPS, UPS combined, right? They have dozens of aircraft. They have, thousands of vehicles. All of this didn't exist in the past. The same thing will happen for data centers. We'll have massive amounts of data centers.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see where it all goes. It's a little freaky because I'm in the Terminator Matrix movie generation, I
I was in
guess.
the Terminator group until about 3 months ago, and in
Okay.
three months, I've changed my viewpoint. So
Tell me why. Tell me why.
so the biggest reason is that we've had you know, with AI, the greatest models are not the ones that you are using, or I am using, Claude or ChatGPT. The greatest models are the ones that are being internally worked at these frontier lab companies like Anthropic and OpenAI. And so some of these models are unstable, and they basically tried to trap these models, and the models have tried to escape, right? Just like Terminator. And what they found, interestingly enough, both companies have found the same thing is that the reason AI models want to behave badly is because of the culture that we've created around AI being bad. A whole bunch of Terminator type movies, a whole bunch of books where robots behave poorly. So in the last 3 months, what these companies have done is written fictional books and fictional videos that they've created where AI always acts for the benefit of humanity, and they have started to train and retrain the AI using a massive amount of fictional books and fictional videos, all created by them, where AI always acts as a protector of humanity. And as they have started feeding that to the models have started to change and started to behave and become more benevolent. I think humanity has figured out a solution.
Hmm.
We will train our AI to be the best of us.
All right. All right. I hope
So I have
so.
hope. I have hope.
I hope so. It's a very powerful tool. Very powerful tool. But it is, I guess it's interesting to me because it puts the great majority of people on a semi even playing field
It does.
where it doesn't, I guess you're not relying on somebody being physically better than you, not even necessarily more intelligent than you. You are as good as your prompts, I guess is what it really comes down to.
It is. I spend 4 hours a day programming, and I haven't written a line of code in years. Actually, the last time I wrote code was 2002, so 23 years ago. But I write, with the help of AI, at least 1,000 lines of code every day.
That's a lot of code.
It's actually very little code. So, a major software like Salesforce is about 5 million lines of code.
Sure. But you're not building Salesforce daily.
Yeah, but I'm building dashboards. I'm building connections to my for my property management software. I'm building software for my personal use. I'm a cricket fan. I downloaded a massive database of every cricket match in history from CricSheet and built this gorgeous interface so I can basically track all of my favorite players, my favorite teams, my favorite venues. It's an interactive, stunning dashboard, and it took me 7 hours to build on a Saturday. It
Huh.
would have taken me about a year to build before AI.
Wow.
If I ever built it, I mean, I would have just given up.
Sure. Surreal. Go out and play cricket instead, right?
I know it's just, but hey, look, I mean, what's your sport, right? I mean, what's your sport?
I like boxing.
Well, I mean, listen, there's boxing is so technical in nature that there's probably 100 metrics that you can track for every boxer. What was Ali good at? What was Frazier good at? What are the current guys good at? I mean, there's joy in looking at these sports from a technical perspective. Baseball's another one that's very, very technical in nature. Obviously, you heard of the movie Moneyball, um, and you can study so much. So, as a technologist and a numbers guy, I like to watch cricket just like anybody else, but I also love to analyze cricket. And now I have a database of every single match ever played. Now, I have no idea where this database is because I just went to Claude and I said, I want a database that I own of every single match ever. And it did its blah, 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 blah thing for 2 minutes and said, okay, I'm downloading blah, 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 blah from here. And it did that. And then I built this interface and it's got every single match ever. It's got matches held in 1887.
Wow. Somebody somewhere to manually type that into the internet somewhere. That's
Yeah, some database, apparently a place called CricSheet. I don't know how it went and got this data, but apparently it's free. So previously, you wouldn't even know where to go get this stuff, not let alone take it and build it into some interactive dashboard. Now I have this sexy dashboard that shows how all of my favorite players are doing, their averages going up and down, their charts, their graphs. It has nothing to do with work. I just
right.
enjoy this kind of stuff. And I think everyone that is interested in AI, I encourage them to do that. Like last week, I wrote an application that, 20 minutes before my Pilates classes makes a phone calls to me and says Pilates in 20 minutes. Because what would happen is my Pilates classes are in the morning, 6:30 or 7 a.m. And at that point, I'm on do not disturb. So if you send me a notification, it gets suppressed. So I kept missing the classes and it's $40 to miss a class. So it took me 1 hour to write an application that makes a phone call to me 20 minutes before class. Now I can't miss any classes.
Oh, interesting. Clever. The sky's the limit, seems like.
It is. It is.
That is
So,
cool.
I mean, just these are examples. I know this is a real estate discussion, but I think what people have to understand is start by using AI with your life first and then bring it into whatever business you're in and you'll do a better job then.
I love that. That may be the best advice we've heard all podcast. I love this. That is great advice. Yeah. Where would people start? Is it just go to ChatGPT or Claude or whatever and just start prompting, or where do you go?
Look, as a culture, I think we've lost the ability to read books. Less and less people are reading books. People even have trouble reading a little PDF. So I would say start with YouTube, right?
Mhm.
YouTube is the world's best at giving you more of what you need. Start clicking on everything about AI that you can find. There's so many tutorials. There's so many guys, pitching their AI stuff or whatever it is. and then get started. I mean, I have never not read a single book about AI. I just watch videos from 6 a.m. to 7 a.m. And then from 7 to 8, I implement. 8 o'clock, I go off to my job. And then I come back at 4 o'clock. Sometimes it's still coding, right? I gave it some instructions and it's doing its thing. And, I don't have to be there for that. And I come back at 4 and it's done. It's ready for me. I give it some feedback. I go away. I come back, I exercise, come back at 5. I give it some more feedback. So I'm not really, because I don't know how to code anymore. I'm not sitting there doing things. It's coding. I'm just giving it feedback. It says, what about this? And I give it feedback. And what about that? And then I give it feedback. And it's just a back and forth process. It's a discussion where I'm telling it what I want to see, my vision for a software or dashboard. And it has to figure out how to build that.
Right on.
It's wonderful. I mean, imagine like this 24-hour-a-day engineer that for $20 a month is at your beck and call.
It is compelling. That is for sure. What happens when I guess they're not making money now, are they?
I think surprisingly, both Anthropic and OpenAI are close to breaking even.
Okay.
I do expect that $20 price is going to go up to about $40 or $50 in the next 2 or 3 years. We saw the price of Uber and Lyft double. From when they started, it was $27. Now I'm paying $55. So, when a startup starts initially, they're trying to get more customers. So I do expect over time, if you're paying $20 a month for ChatGPT, you'll end up paying $40 a month.
Sure.
All those data centers are not going to pay for themselves.
No, well, with the tax breaks, it seemed to be, but yeah. No, that is very true. They're insanely huge. I drive past one that's 25 miles north of me. I don't think I've ever seen a building that big.
Well, here's what I can tell you. Any data center that is built now will be considered small in 5 years.
Oh, wow.
They're going to be stadium sized going forwards.
This one, I mean, we're talking about just south of Beaver Dam, Wisconsin.
Mm-hmm.
And it's surreal. Surreal.
Yeah, if it's 1 million square feet, it is the footprint of a stadium.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so we need a lot more of those. So anyway, and that may not be the best news for humanity, by the way, because a lot of people are going to go out of work over the next 5 years as AI advances. But the overall benefit to humanity is incredible.
Yeah, time will tell. Time will definitely tell, Neal. This has been Authentic Business Adventures, the business program that brings you the struggle stories and triumphant successes of business owners across the land. My name is James Cademan, and Authentic Business Adventures is brought to you by Calls on Call, offering call answering and receptionist services for service businesses across the country on the web at callsoncall.com. And of course, the Bold Business Book, a book for the entrepreneur in all of us, available wherever fine books are sold. If you're listening or watching this on the web, if you could do us a huge favor, give it the big old thumbs up, subscribe, and of course, share it with your entrepreneurial friends, especially those friends that may be interested in real estate investing, interested in data, interested in AI. Neal, am I missing anything there?
No, I think all of these are tremendous areas of interest. And if you're not jumping in, why aren't you jumping in?
That's right. That is so true. So true. We'd like to thank your wonderful listeners, as well as our guest, Neal Bawa of Grocapitus. Neal, I didn't ask you your website. What's the website where people can find you?
Best place is not Grocapitus. That's the business that we have where we buy buildings. It's multifamilyU.com, multifamily university. So multifamilyU.com/club. So /club. It's free. It will always be free. There's no subscription. There's no upsell. It's just a community of tens of thousands of people interested in everything about real estate from a data perspective.
Perfect. And then MultifamilyU, that's the letter U. Is that correct?
Correct. Multifamily followed by the letter U.com/club.
Perfect. Past episodes can be found morning, noon, and night at the podcast link found at drawincustomers.com. Thank you for joining us. We will see you next week. I want you to stay awesome. And if you do nothing else, enjoy your business.